If I paint the bases on these, that's 3 colors. Does that count as battle ready? Wow! Welcome back to the Ramblings Go Fast, old Big Mek here, and it's time for another episode of Orktober! Let's get into it! For those of you that have been living under a rock, welcome! You've made it to the Red Ones Go Fasta, the fastest growing Warhammer channel on all of YouTube, because it's red. But also because it's Orktober, and in Orktober, old Big Mek goes a little nutty and does a new video every single day of the month. We've been doing it for over a week already. We did it all last year, and there has been a ton of amazing content already. One of the things we have done is kind of a project within a project. Outside of just having a month long of videos for 40K, we are doing an army project, specifically painting one. This one. This is over 1,500 points of Warhammer 40,000 Orcs Beast Snagas, to be precise. What happened is the Holiday Battle Force that you see up there, when it came out, I wanted to add the Beast Snagas to my Orc collection because I love all the Orcs equally, and it was just a really good opportunity to do so. And we did a whole video series on how long it takes a regular person to actually build that army. Spoiler alert, it took a really long time. When you are dealing with working full-time, raising grots, going to college, all that kind of stuff, there's not a lot of time to do things like this, and well, it takes a long time, especially if you want to do it correctly. So anyways, we went through the whole process of building the army, put it in the display case, and then probably forgot about it for like 6 months. Well, now Orktober is here, and last Orktober I did as much as I could to get as much of my army painted as possible throughout the month, which was really cool, and I got a lot of units finished, and was a lot of fun. And this year I thought what would be good is to take this army that I spent so much time building and actually paint it. And not only paint it, but paint it in a way that answers a very important question. And that is, how long does it take to actually paint a real full-size Warhammer army as a regular person? YouTube is rife with crazy videos where guys do it in 24 hours or 12 hours. They're using airbrushes, they have multiple people working on it, and their armies, frankly, are like combat patrol size. They're not 1,500 points and almost 50 models worth. So if you are a regular person and you've got all these, life, family obligations, how long is it really going to take you to paint an army? And what kind of tips and techniques could you use to get it done faster without having to buy a bunch of specialized equipment like an airbrush? Well, in the first episode, we did all the primering on this, and that's how we ended up with these great gradients on not only the infantry, but also the mounted units and vehicles. And so if you haven't seen that episode, you should definitely click the link that is on the little tag up here right now so that you can be fully up to speed on how we got the army to this point. Now, we're going to start with some actual painting. Now first, a couple of words before we really get into it. There is no trickery here. This is my personal army that I'm painting for my own enjoyment. I'm not going to paint just the fronts of enough to do a thumbnail and then call it good. I'm not going to do some crazy stay up for 24 or 48 hour montage of me doing all this stuff. I am literally doing this an hour here, half hour there, a little bit on a weekend kind of a deal. So it might not even get done in Orktober, and that's okay. The big part about getting an army done is just staying consistent with working on it on a regular basis. That's how you make progress on projects. And secondly, don't take anything I say here as absolute gospel. Frankly, there is no wrong way to do it. If you want to buy an airbrush and paint your army with all an airbrush, go for it. If you enjoy using contrast paints, do that. If you want to paint every single figure to some crazy high standard and take years to do it, that's okay too. There is no wrong way. What I'm sharing with you all is kind of my way of doing this particular army. As somebody that's painted quite a few Warhammer armies, I've got a couple of different techniques, and just hope that maybe you'll glean some useful information that you can utilize to get your own army painted. So again, not an expert, Nothing I say is gospel, but if you pick up some good hints, that's what I'm going for. And hey, it also helps me get up my army done. All right, let's get them on the paint bench. All right, here is the army all set up on the painting desk, including our kill rig. So here we have over 1,500 points all in. Now, first things first, I'm trying to get a little organized. Obviously, painting the infantry is going to go one way, painting the mounted things is going to go another way, and then this ginormous thing is kind of a beast upon itself. One thing I don't want to do is accidentally mix up my squads here. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually number the bottom of all of the squads, both the infantry and the mounted, to make sure that I don't accidentally move things around. I spent so much time converting these that it would truly be a shame to get them mixed up. Now, doing this as simple as the bottom of their bases are still the Games Workshop black, and I'm just using a metallic Sharpie here to write on the bottom. I'm going with B1 for Bisnaga Squad 1 on the 20 boy squad. Moving on to the smaller squad of 10, this one is going to be B2. One thing that I do like to do is call out my characters as well, in case there's ever any question. I mean, knobs are pretty easy because they've got the boss pulls on the back, but just in case there's ever any questions from another player on who the leader is. For the mounted Squighog boys, I am going with Squighog 1 and Squighog 2. All right, with that completed, we've got all of our primer miniatures inside. We've got them organized, we've got them labeled, we've got all the parts together with everything, like the kill rig, for example. The riders are in separate parts, the squig is off, all that kind of stuff. Now we can start actually putting paint to the minis. Now, there's a couple of different ways to go about this. Slap chop or undercoating is obviously the big popular one. That's where you essentially zenithal or dry brush and then use all contrast paint on top of it and kind of run with it. It's got its places and it looks good here and there, and I may well use some contrast paint on some of the furs and things like that on these Bisnagas, but as a general rule, I don't necessarily love it. The contrast paints just aren't consistent enough paint to paint to really work properly, and frankly, it's just not my painting style. I am a little old school. I like base coating, I like dry brushing, and I really, really like using shades, like actual inky shades to get down into those recesses and stuff. But yeah, what we're going to be doing with these guys is we're going to start from the bottom layer. And by the bottom, I don't mean like the base or his feet. I mean, when you look at the mini, what is the thing on it that is closest to its skin, essentially, which in this case would be the skin. You want to start with the skin and then paint outwards from there. So the details that are now further out on the body. So you go from the skin to the clothing to the armor on top of the clothing to any kind of decorations on top of that. So you paint kind of from the inside out. So the first thing we're going to do is get orc skin on all these boys. All right, one thing that I'm doing is I am keeping my Beast Boss on foot out for inspiration. So this is the only painted Beast Snag unit I have. This is converted from the special mini from the first year of Warhammer Plus, and I'm just keeping him here as inspiration to make sure that I'm following my paint scheme. Now, when it comes to the skin, like we were talking about, these guys, we don't have to do a whole heck of a lot because, hey, guess what? Their undercoats are black and green. We can start throwing our shades on right away. However, our riders and other whatnots, like these outrigger guys from the kill rig, they are red and black, and so we need to get some other colors on here before we get to our shades. All right, so what we're working here with here is an Army Painter regiment size brush and some Tamiya XF71 cockpit green. I like the Tamiya paints because they are affordable, they're easy to find, they are an alcohol-based acrylic paint. You can clean up your brushes with basic water, and then if you get too much stuff going on, a little bit of isopropyl alcohol solves all of your woes. So yeah, what we're going to be doing is actually almost kind of pseudo dry brushing, dry wet brushing, if you will, the skin here. I'm going to show you what I mean. So basically, we don't want to lose this gradient that we've got going on entirely. What I want to do is, when the brush is wet, start off here on the top where I want it to all be green. And as I run out of paint on the brush, transition to dry brushing on the lower parts that are more black, thus creating kind of a wet and dry, like a wet base coat and a dry brush all in one. And there's what I mean. It's starting here up top, we've got almost full coverage of the green, and the more you go down, the less green there is, the more of the black is left over. It becomes almost like a dry brush highlight. It's quick, it's messy, and it's okay. You don't need perfect coverage. Leaving like the little bit of red in the depths of the muscles there is totally acceptable. There you go. Just like that, we've got our first skin base coat done on our first beast snag. Only, I don't know, about 1 million to go. All right, getting some more of them done, and you can see I'm trying to not paint some of the other details, but it's okay if you do. Like right here, I have gotten some paint on his little ankle wrist thing there that's going to be metallic anyway. The metallic will cover that up entirely, so I really don't care there. I don't also need to come up quite all the way to the piece here around wrapped around his bicep, because we're going to be using a lot of shades in there. The shades are going to settle down in those recesses and get it all out, or like define it all. You notice too, again, lots of bionics. There is a bionic arm on this particular orc. Lots of them have metal skulls and peg legs and things like that, so making sure not to waste any time base coating that, because it's not going to be metallic anyway. One thing I am doing is making sure I'm mindful of any ripped holes in the pants to go ahead and throw a dot of green in there. All right, so I wanted to go over something with you. You notice here that the from far away, the base coat looks pretty decent, and then you get up close and it's a bit splotchy and doesn't have good coverage, and that's okay. First of all, things that you're not going to notice, such as all the undersides of his arms and the back of his back there behind the chair, like you're not going to see it anyway, especially once the whole tower thing is in place here on the top. So don't paint what you can't see. Secondly, paint is an additive process, right? Every time you put paint on top of paint, unless it's truly translucent, you're going to cover up what you've already done. So why paint things 3 times? If you're going to have a darker paint in your recess, leave the recess for the darker paint. If you're going to have a lighter paint on your highlight, leaving the highlight areas for that lighter color are totally acceptable. You only want to paint everything once.
Here is our Werboy's skin, all base coated. Now on my basic Beast Snagaboys here, I really don't have to do a lot. A lot of the arms and things have these wonderful gradients on them from the green to the black. The faces are pretty well undercoated. What I'm really looking out for is hands on weapons. For example, down here in the axe holding area, you can see his fingers are all black. So just trying to get a little bit of green onto those so that we read as skin down in there. Without like going overboard and ruining all of our gradients that we worked on. We also have like here on his back, we didn't get a whole lot of the primer on his back area there, and now that I'm getting down to more of a dry brush-ish amount of paint on my brush, just doing something like that helps me get a little bit of color, a little bit of texture on there so that he is ready for the shade stage.
Alright, it's quite a few hours later, you can tell, because it is now dark outside. It's been a couple of paint sessions over the course of a weekend, but really it was very, very realistic to real life, right? Had a weekend, worked a little bit on it Friday night, worked a little bit on it Saturday, worked a little bit on it Sunday into Sunday night. You know, maybe got the games going on or whatever. You're watching Blood Bowl. And yeah, I've got a really good start on this army. Let me show you. Here is the 20-man, and there is the 10-man Beast Snaga squad. These did not need much, obviously, by us having our green and black Zenithal, but I did want to make sure that I got the undersides like that, where it was all black, make sure we got something on there, make sure the hands had some green on them, and just generally made sure I was happy with all the skin on them. They really, really didn't take all that much time. It was more doing the vehicle bits and whatnot, like our driver there, our Werboy, our couple of gunners, our couple of side guys, the Pain Boss and his little Grot Orderly, and that Werboy, as well as the actual Squig Hog Riders here. Now these guys I am super, super stoked with. They look fantastic. You've got that red to black Zenithal going on the Squiggy. You've got the green on their skin now. I am really excited to see how these turn out. This has been such a super simple process. If this was the only squad you were painting, you're in this maybe 20 minutes at this point in between the priming and the first layer of painting, and that's already looking pretty good. Now the next step is to do some washes to get our skin colors. Now what we want to do here is use a nice thin wash. You don't want to use a contrast paint. If you used something like the GW Ork Flesh contrast paint, this would actually completely blow out all of the gradients that we have, and it would just kind of look splotchy and monocolor, and that's not what we want. What you want are the shades, and the shades are really cool because they are super thin. You can put them on there, and there's a bunch of different grains, and really what you want to do is have just a slight bit of variation between the squads so that not every guy is exactly the same color, and it looks much, much more realistic. So I'm going to grab all the greens I have and literally just slap them on.
So here's my collection. I've got Croak Green, Poxwalker, Bielton Green, and a good old pot of Thraka Green. That's going to give me 4 different greens with which to wash all the skin on my entire army. I'm even using the same old beat up brush. That's it. Just a simple wash on all of the skin parts. The great thing about the wash compared to like the contrast paint is it's not going to pool up on your surfaces. It is going to sink down into the recesses and dry there, and that's it. You're not going to end up with these big splotchy areas, and that is really the secret sauce to washes and why they are so fun. If you've got too much pooling, like right here on his eye, you can take your slightly drier brush and just scoop it right out, and yeah, it just works the business. All right, I'm going to show you literally what I'm doing, just how easy this is. This really, don't overthink it. You're literally just slapping a wash on wherever it's supposed to be green, and whatever goes over goes over. It's okay. You're gonna get to those spots later anyway, and you can use the brush to kind of spread it around spots where you didn't necessarily want it to be, because the wash will totally soak back up into the bristles and then lay back down where you want it. So I want to make sure that I get up underneath his chin, into the armpits, get everything up underneath those shoulder pads so that if you do happen to look up in there, it is green like it's supposed to be. And yeah, just kind of let her rip. Make sure we get everywhere that's got some skin. Even if it's just all black undercoat, that's okay. This is going to tint some of it, you know, a little bit of green, reed green, and yeah, it's going to work just fantastic. And I think that's it. Yeah, we got all the green on that arm, we got all the green on the chest, we got all the green on his face. Boom, done. And I mean, literal seconds, and that one is finished. Do you wanna do another one? Let's do another one. All right, let's grab this guy from the other squad. We're gonna start here at the top and just start slathering it in there. Again, I'm not really concerned about anywhere else it's going because this is the bottom layer. So everything else that gets painted after this is going on top of this color anyway. So yeah, any kind of overage, mess up, it's not that big a deal. We can deal with it. The guns and stuff are all going to be metallic, and metallic paint is definitely going to cover up absolutely everything. So I'm not really worried about any armor. I'm trying hard not to get it on the furs and stuff, because we will be using some different shades and maybe even some contrasts on those. But yeah, the actual like armor panels and stuff, don't really care. So yeah, like that, and he's done. I mean, you can whip out a whole squad in what, 15 minutes maybe. You know, and these aren't Space Marines. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be identical. You're painting orcs. But yeah, this technique works for anything with skin. This is how I paint the skin on my Imperial Guard. This is how I paint the skin on my my Eldar. Yeah, if it's skin, I do it like this. I get a zenithal underneath it with the primer. You do a little bit of wet to dry brushing, base coat looking thingy on it, and then slap a bunch of wash down and see what it looks like when it's dry, and then touch up from there. And yeah, you'll find that you really don't need to touch up much, if any. And you know, when you're painting a whole army, kind of speed is your friend. You know, as long as you don't make so many mistakes that you have to go back and spend a lot of time fixing them. But yeah, this is just working great. Bam, there's another one done.
All right, the lighting in here is terrible, not only for filming, but for my actual eyes. I'm going to call it here for tonight. We'll pick this back up tomorrow. I'll show you what the ones that we have washed look like all dry, and then we'll go from there. All right, it's the next day, as you can tell by the fact that there's actually light now, so we can show you what these look like.
Here is one of our boys right here. We've got the shade going on there. And yeah, it's provided between the shade and the zenithal underneath it a pretty nice little skin tone, great for good old tabletop action. Obviously, we'll be doing a lot more detailing to them, but for our first step, this is good. This one as well, you can see you've got definition down into the muscle areas. You've got some darker shades up underneath and some lighter shades up on top. Looks pretty good. And the knob here has a different shade color, a lighter one, so he ended up with a lighter colored overall orky green skin. Looks good. Here's the ones I'm really happy with. The Outrider guys. Remember these? We zenithaled in the black and the brick red, and then we brush painted on that wet to dry kind of sloppy blend. And yeah, look how that turned out. Look how that looks with the combination of the red and black. Really pops.
All right, and that is it for this one. We have now taken our army from built to primed and kind of like beginnings of undercoat going on with that zenithal to now our first layers of both a base coat for the skin and our first wash. And yeah, it's starting to come along. It's starting to sort of look like an army, especially the ones that are zenithal, the black and brick red, and then painting the green skin on them. We've got 3 colors on them. Obviously, you don't want to rig into a tournament like that, but like when you think about painting an army and how long it takes, having these steps where you like really see something that starts to look like you're getting somewhere is a building block, right? It gets you excited to keep going. You're like, man, this is looking really good. I'm pumped about this. I want to keep painting. And that's really key. Yeah, these little Outrider guys are looking really good. I'm super stoked about all the ones that are undercoated with the red. And the Squig Hog boys are just, yeah, really, really coming along. So I'm going to keep working on this now off camera. I'm going to spend the rest of this week washing the rest of the skin tones, as well as doing the same steps to the squigs. Only obviously we'll be using some red paint instead of some green paint for their kind of undercoats. And that'll get us our first layers of things done. And then from there, we'll move on to the next step, which you'll catch in another episode. So yeah, if you don't want to miss that, make sure you are subscribed. And there's plenty of content in between now and then, because after all, it is Orktober, and we are bringing you a brand spanking new Warhammer 40K pretty orc focused video every single day of the month. So even if you're only here for the army painting project, there's going to be other fun things. We've tried scratch building a cruiser for Battlefleet Gothic. We did the world's funniest kit bash with a paint pot and a Killacan, and a bunch of other fun, zany, and awesome 40K videos. So until we see it in that one, WAAAAAAAAAAAAAGH!